the steps on how to use the Create a Graph website, which is a very easy website to use to do graphs for labs. So all you have to do is search for the Create a Graph website. You'll see here, it's the first one that comes up. We'll be using line graphs in lab, so all you have to do is click the line box here. Double check, make sure you have what you need. Here you can see the tabs of everything you can do, and you can switch between these tabs as you go through and come back to what you want. So what we want to do is go into the data tab, and here you're going to enter a very good title for the graph. So if we use the last question from our graphing packet about the rainfall in the different biomes, so you'd enter a good title here for your x-axis, what you need on your x-axis, which is your manipulated variable. So here we would have day of the year. Your y-axis would be then the average rainfall, and that is in inches. Underneath source, this is where I'd like you to put your name and your mod. So once we've got this set here, to put your title and your axes on there, again, make sure you have your units. We come down to the data, which will go into this section right here. So if you remember from the example, we had 3 biomes, the tropical rainforest, temperate deciduous forest, and the desert. So that means we are going to need 3 groups. So we can increase our groups here. Once we've done that, you can label those groups. So essentially these groups are going to become the lines that are on your graph. So this graph here becomes the tropical rain forest. Our second group is the temperate deciduous forest. And our third group was then the desert. So once we have our groups in, we can go through, and I prefer to have my lines to be small because they take up less space on the graph. We want points for our data points so we know where those are. So each group needs to have their own shape, so it's easy to discern between the different groups. Now again, I like small because it takes up less space. If you're printing this out at home, the colors matter. If you're printing it out at school, it'll print out black and white. Now what we have here is we have our items. Our items then are going to be our points along the x-axis. So here the rainfall was every 30 days. So we can kind of begin this. And so on down the road. If we need to add items, you just click up here. So we have 5, so I add 2 more. Again, the graph actually requires much more than that, but you can see how to add items. So we'll do 150, and the last one is 180. So this becomes your x-axis. Again, if you've put your units up here, you do not need to re-put those down here. So if I go and I look at the data here, we had 8 inches, then 9, 13, 15, 18, and 15. So 3, 2, and at this point in time, I'm just entering the data. So we might have very minimal rain in the desert. So now we've entered all of our data in. Once you have all of your data, you have this set and so on, we can then take a look at labels. At this point in time, they're going to put the numbers on the label. So if you want to take a look here, you can actually see the numbers are going to be printed above those values. With those values, then we're going to run into issues if the graph lines come together. The numbers will actually go through and combine. So I prefer to actually take those numbers off, because when it comes to labs, you'll also be turning in your data tables. So if we do that, you'll notice there are no more numbers here. So that's it. At this point in time, this graph is done. Here we have day of the year. Here we have average rainfall. So we get this nice value here. One thing you can do, let's assume we'll just kind of fudge this data to make it rain more. I know it doesn't rain this much in the desert. So if I do that and I take a preview here, you'll see now that my graph is different, but here I have space down on the bottom, and on some graphs that space will be the pretty much bottom half. So to get rid of that, we can set our min and our max values. So here our min value was 2, so we can set our min value at 1.5, and in doing so, oops, sorry, forgot to put my max value. We'll go with 20. So now I've removed that big old gap. So we can go through and fix that data. Where people run into issues is if they fix these values and then they move on to another graph, they forget this, and when they look at their graph, the graph will go way off the bottom and just disappear and come back on. If that happens to you, go back and double check these values here that your data fits between those. So once you've previewed this, you can see I've got my good title, label with units, label with units, your name. It gives you a key over here. We have a nice graph. You go to print and save. If we go to print, this actually becomes cumbersome. I think we hit print multiple times. So if you hit print, you can then see it brings up this PDF. You say, yes, I want to print. So that's print number 2. It brings up the printer dialog box here. You say, yes, I would like to print. This is what it'll look like. So you hit print again. If this is what you would like, you can go through. If you're on the laptop cart, print here. If you need to choose your printer, you can choose down here. So if you hit print here, your graph will finally print. If you're at home and don't have the option to print, you can save it as a PDF. You can also email the graph to me or to yourself here at school and print it out while you're here at school. What you have to be careful of if you email it is this becomes a website. If you go back to do your second graph and change that, that website will be the exact same thing, and you'll print out the new graph and not the old graph. So you need to then, once you're done, start over and create another graph. But that's it. It's a fairly simple website. It's straightforward. Hopefully this has helped you.